also recording this forum for anyone who could not be in attendance this evening. Very important. We have 1 hour, 1 hour to learn more about our candidates. Unfortunately, one of our candidates, Mr. Guesty, has sent his regrets this evening and will not be joining us. However, he did provide an email address if anyone wishes to contact him with questions. It is guesty for BSD at gmail.com. That's GESTY, the number 4, BSD at gmail.com. I am going to turn this over to my one and only Alexis to review the format. Take it away, Alexis.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this important forum. My name is Alexis Andrianopoulos. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Brandywine School District, and I'm just going to go through a couple of really quick ground rules and the format. We have shared this with the candidates already, but we just want to make sure everyone else is aware. We have a number of questions that were pre-submitted by our Parent and Citizen Advisory Committee. We will get through a couple of those. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer, and we will rotate the order in which they answer. We randomly selected Mrs. Stock to be the first to answer question number 1. So question 1 will be Kim and then Tanya, and then question 2, Tanya, Kim. We'll just keep rotating back and forth so you each have an opportunity to answer first. And there will be a timer, there will be a timer on the screen so you can see how much time is left, and then there will be a nice sound when your time is up, which
Alexis,
I'm really wishing I had now.
Alexis, I hate to interrupt you. The timer
okay.
doesn't look like it's working right now, so I'll
Okay.
keep time and try to get that up and running.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then just so the public is aware, this is a forum and not a debate. So the candidates won't be speaking directly to each other. There's no rebuttal. It's not that kind of a setup. And we know that in other districts, not in BSD, there has been some negativity in some previous forums. So we are going to assure our listeners and our viewers that we will model great behavior here in BSD as we always do. So I'm going to send it back to Howard for the first question.
We're very fortunate in the Brandywine School District to have 3 outstanding candidates for our school board. We would like to give each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves and answer the first question as part of their introduction. The question is, what is the role of a school board member, and how does your background make you a good candidate? Mrs. Stock, we're gonna let you go first.
Do you want me to introduce myself and then answer the question?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I have 2 minutes to introduce myself and then 2 minutes to answer the question?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, all
No.
2 minutes. It's all 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, great.
our goal is that in your introduction, you would also address how, what the role of the school board member is and how your background prepared you for that.
Okay.
That role.
All right, great. My name is Kim Stock, and I am a parent for the Brandywine School District. My husband and I have been parents in the Brandywine School District since 2006, when my oldest daughter received gifted services from K-8, and then she graduated from Cab Calloway, and then she is now a sophomore at the University of Delaware. I'm a current parent. We are current parents because my youngest daughter is actually a freshman at Brandywine High School. And one of the reasons why I am running for the school board is because I am a parent. That is my #1 job. And I'm going to talk about that tonight, actually. But another important job that I do have is that I am a teacher for the Red Clay School Board. And because I'm a teacher, I also understand education, and I have a proven track record in my effectiveness as an educator, as an educational leader, with my service to the Claymont Community Center and the programs that I was able to initiate and also to adopt. So the role of a school board member is that you are an elected representative. And as somebody who is a representative of teachers and students this year, as a 2021 Delaware Teacher of the Year, this is something that I really do understand very well. And it's a position that I've gotten more comfortable with. And I know that it's something that I can use what I've learned this year as a representative as a school board member. And I also know that a school board member is here to also pass the budget. And as somebody who had to work with a budget at the Claymont Community Center and who had to try to get grants to help to try to do that in order to run our programs, I had to seek partnerships. I partnered with the Christina School District. I also partnered with other nonprofits. Boy, do I understand the process of money. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Heller. You will begin starting.
It takes a second to reset.
Okay, let's let it reset.
Okay. Well, first I want to thank you all for having us here at the Brandywine School District Parent and Citizen Advisory Committee for hosting this forum tonight. My name is Dr. Tanya Hetler, and I'm for the Brandywine School Board. My husband and I have lived in the Brandywine School District for 25 years, and both of our kids are in the Brandywine schools. We initially moved to Delaware for me to go to graduate school at the University of Delaware and get my master's and PhD in psychology. I gained considerable teaching experience while I was in graduate school and afterward as an adjunct professor. A major component of a PhD in psychology is an ability to understand and digest scientific research articles and utilize their findings to make decisions about programs, spending, and policy in such a way as to provide the most benefit. Furthermore, as a psychologist who has counseled families and children, I'm very aware of the social, emotional, psychological, and societal struggles that kids and teens experience. I've seen the ways in which children's and teens' culture, ethnicity, family situations, socioeconomic status, and other childhood experiences affect their educational experiences for better or for worse, and therefore impact their overall well-being and future. I would bring my experience as a mom and a psychologist and a researcher and an instructor to my role as a school board member. A school board member's job is to carefully evaluate programs, curriculum, ideas, and spending to determine whether they will provide the greatest benefit in our district. A school board member is responsible to wisely and responsibly use taxpayer money in the best way to improve the situation for students.
Thank you, Mrs. Heller, for that great question. Candidates, please don't get scared when you hear that bell. It's the 10-second rule. We have the great Vanna White, Cora Scott on the timer. So she's just giving you the 10-second warning. Miss Alexis, would you like to do the next question?
Yes, sir. So I'm going to direct this first to Dr. Hetler and then Ms. Stock, if you will follow up. So the next question is, if funding were not an issue, so picture unlimited funds, if funding were not an issue, what would be your top 3 priorities in the Brandywine School District? And Dr. Hetler, we're going to ask you to go first for this one.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure how this relates to the funding, but I guess one of my biggest concerns is the Common Core curriculum and the Smarter Balance testing. I guess how it would relate to funding is that I know that the federal government gives us money for using that curriculum and that testing. And there are definitely limitations to it. So I guess that would be one of my ways that I would want to change things, to free us up from being bound to that, where teachers don't have a lot of freedom in what they teach and can't use their own creativity, which has been essential this past year for students during COVID. Some of my kids' teachers have done amazing things to make an otherwise not very interesting time of sitting and staring at a computer screen more interesting. So I like the fact that teachers would have more freedom. Other issues, well, certainly the COVID issue, but I'm not sure how well. I guess over the summer, we definitely need to do something to try to remediate the situation from this past year. I know that the State Board of Education is looking into ways to help bring kids back up after this sort of a year of a slump. And yeah, if there were no budget limitations, I would say we could provide kids with lots of materials for the summer, and also with some way to motivate them to do those materials. We definitely were lacking in some motivation this year with kids turning off their computer screens or logging into a class and then leaving. So some way that we could be able to motivate them to really stick with the material and learn it.
Thank you, Dr. Eller. Ms. Stock?
I'm sorry, based on the answer, can you just repeat that question again? Was it what I would like to do if funding were not an issue? Is that the question?
Correct, right. So the
Okay.
way it's worded is, if funding were not an issue, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Okay, so the first priority obviously is we have to address our students, our staff, our community, our parents, our teachers, emotional well-being and physical well-being, of course, during the pandemic. I don't think that we should kid ourselves. I think that this is definitely going to be priority number 1. And when students do return into the building, and of course, a lot of them already have returned into the building for 4 days a week, we need to oftentimes we need to treat this as the beginning of the year again. We need to reestablish an environment. We need to come up with protocol again so that students feel both physically safe as well as emotionally safe, so that they can feel like they can trust the adults around them again. And I think that this is going to be an issue that is definitely going to carry into the fall. But the other issue that I care really passionately about is equity in education. And I want to first just tell you what equity in education is not. Equity in education is not about making anybody feel bad, because historical laws, historical different systems, all have an effect on what happens today, both in the classroom and in society. But it is through education that we can actually bring these opportunities for everybody. So equalizing the playing field. I told you during my introduction that my oldest daughter graduated from Cab Calloway. Well, I realized that the reason why she was able to get into Cab Calloway is because my husband and I spent thousands of dollars for her to be able to go to piano lessons, and we drove her to her choir practices. But not all families have these resources. So should other students then miss out on certain opportunities just because they didn't also have those same resources? We have to do better in education. And so even though we're not talking about funding, we are definitely going to need to take a look at our programs and our structures in our schools that allow for some students to
Thank you,
eat.
Dr. Stock. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question. Get a breathe. Get a breathe. The next question. How familiar are you with the work of the Reading Consortium? And what is your opinion about the potential redistricting specifically for the students in the city of Wilmington? Dr. Stock, you will go first on this.
I just want to correct you. I am not a doctor. I do have 2 masters. So no, that's okay. That's okay. I just didn't want people to say, oh my gosh, So I am familiar with the Reading Consortium, and I have looked into actually their redistricting proposals. And I know that there are different proposals to whether to go to one large school district or whether to go to 2 or 3 school districts. Keep Christina kind of out of the redistricting. Whatever it is that we decide to do, we need to have different stakeholders really at the table to talk about what is really going to be best. We have to take into account what is this going to do as far as personnel, how would we shift people, who would they work for? There's going to be a lot of logistics that take place here when, for this redistricting purpose. And the reality is that we have to remember our number 1 priority, which is our students. So we need to take a look at what each district can offer for the students in Wilmington. And the reality is that we have to take a look at which resources are available in order to help these students also have an equal playing field, whether that be both in the curriculum, whether that be both in our efforts to recruit and retain teachers and faculty of color, or whether that be in making efforts to bring the schools to the community, as opposed to expecting the community to always have to try to find a way to get into the schools. So there's actually a lot of things that we can do, but we have to understand who our parents are, who our community is. And the reality is, all it takes is just saying to them, what is it that we can do better for you? When I had a conversation with Superintendent Green of the Red Clay Consolidated School District, that was one of his approaches that he likes to take. Instead of saying, this is what we want to do for you, say to somebody, what can I do for you?
Thank you, Mrs. Stock. And I'm gonna get this one right. Dr. Hetler, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, I understand why people are talking about the benefits of redistricting, but I'm not actually in favor of it. I feel like even within our districts already, there's so much variety as we extend between Concord High School and PS DuPont Middle School. I think adding more schools in there would just add extra variability that we'd have to deal with. Red Clay has even greater socioeconomic variability than Brandywine School District. So certainly combining those two would lead to further challenges of having to cater to different needs in different schools. So I'm really not in favor of it. I think we have a challenge enough with our 16 schools in the Brandywine School District that combining would not, I mean, I understand people are talking about doing it to save money on administration, but I think maybe there are other ways of saving money if that's what our concern is, by decreasing the number of administrators within our own district as opposed to combining with a different district. And I also have heard the concerns that the property values have not been reassessed between, say, for example, the city of Wilmington and the suburbs, and that there can be some discrepancy there between our different schools, and that would be a useful thing to have happen. I think it hasn't happened since before I was born. I kind of think it was in the 60s or something that they actually did that assessment for the last time, and they've just been sort of estimating. So I think that would make sense to do, and to proportion funds appropriately based on that assessment.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler. Thank you. Alexis, would you
Yes,
like
sir.
to consider the next question?
Before I ask the next question, and I want to warn the candidates, it's a long question, and I will repeat it if you need me to. But I noticed that at least one person has their hand raised among the viewers. If you have a question or you would like to make a comment or question, please use the Q&A box and type it in, because we only have an hour, so we need to keep it moving. So this is going to go to Dr. Hetler first. One of BSD's strengths is its diversity. The district serves 10,500 exceptional students with differing needs, learning styles, abilities, and backgrounds. How will you manage the difficult balancing act between listening to the concerns of all stakeholders, abiding by federal and state mandates, ensuring equity and fairness, and meeting the needs of all students to ensure they are set up for success when they leave BSD?
I agree that the variation in both ethnic background and cultural background, and even special ed needs or gifted needs, is definitely a benefit to Brandywine School District. I mean, that's what the United States is based on, that we bring people in from all different cultures and all different backgrounds and work together. So I think that is a strength, definitely. I do think that there are issues of prejudice still, nonetheless. I don't think most people do that intentionally. I think that it's generally something that we do without even realizing it. Of course, there are always a couple bad apples who know what they're doing and are very hostile and judgmental and view different groups in different ways. But I think that for the most part, our teachers and staff and our students work together and try to view each other with an open mind. of the ways that I've thought would be helpful for us to bring the diversity together is to have trainings done perhaps by teachers from the minority groups, whether they're a racial minority or a religious minority, or even a special education diagnosis, and to bring those groups to speak with teachers and administrators, or even with students, and to have almost like we have set up now, but maybe with 5 or 10 people up front who can discuss different issues that are currently hot topics related to race or these other variables, and talk about their own experiences of them so that they can share that with
Thank
others.
you, Dr. Hetler. Thank you. Mrs. Stock, 2 minutes.
Do you need me to repeat the very long question?
If you could, I think it was
Sure.
about how I would go about meeting all the 10,000 some students' needs while still complying to federal law. And was there another part of the question?
Yes. Okay. So I'll skip the intro. How will you manage the difficult balancing act between listening to the concerns of all stakeholders, abiding by federal and state mandates, ensuring equity and fairness, and meeting the needs of all students to ensure they are set up for success?
Okay, well, first of all, I think that we should address what the federal and legal mandates are, and that I know for a fact that meeting the needs of certain students, like our English learners, has definitely been a challenge. And it's one of the things the state is actually trying to rectify now by trying to pass opportunity funding as code for our English learner students specifically, as well as our students who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So now here's the thing. I'm not going to do this alone. I have taken education law, of course. And of course, as an educator, I do have to know what those legal ramifications are and what the legal guidelines are. However, we do have people in the district who are also hired to make sure that we are having the Title I, Title III, or whatever it may be, those funding, and that we are appropriately using that for our students. Now, as far as listening to people and their needs are, well, one of the things that I intend to do is actually open up either maybe Zoom during the pandemic, or maybe an outdoor place where I can meet people and people can come talk to me, like a public forum when I'm elected. And that way, I would love to talk to you, and I would love to hear your stories. It's one of the things that when people email me and they write me, I say to them, tell me your story. What has happened? Where is it that you are getting this perspective and where these questions are? Because as somebody who's an educator who already deals with this in my everyday job, I am more than aware of how to actually try to meet those needs. One of the things that we can actually do to get all of our students excited and motivated to learn is to actually adopt what are called the social justice standards. And these are standards that help.
Thank you, Mrs. Stock. I tell you what, you ladies are doing an outstanding job, and I don't know how. These are the times where I wish I wasn't a Brandywine resident, because I don't know how I'm going to vote on May 11th. And to the people out there, remember, May 11th is the voting date. All right, so for the next question, in your opinion, what are the major issues facing public education today? Mrs. Stock, you're first.
Okay, so definitely the first major issue is inequity. This is what I wrote about in my application to become the Teacher of the Year, is my personal experience with inequity in the schools, and then also what I was seeing as an educator. Inequity is not just because you're getting discriminated against because you might practice a different religion than somebody, or that you might have more melanin in your skin. The reality is that is a part of it, but inequity is also explaining why certain students have a system that's set up for them to do. It's easier for them to do a little bit better, and where other students, it's a much harder battle for them to do as well. And so we have to take a look at the systems that we have in place. We need to take a look at our discipline practices. And the reality is that prejudice, although, and since I am an educator, I can say that luckily I rarely run into overt prejudice, thank goodness. But the reality is that sometimes we do have some implicit bias, whether that be for students who come from a different culture, different religion, who speak a language other than English, that we all have this bias. So what is happening in terms of our bias as educators in terms of the systems that we've set up as far as discipline? Because we know for a fact, it is not as if certain students behave worse than other groups of students. So we need to take a look at what we've done here as educators, and we need to ask ourselves some really hard questions. The other important issue that I feel very passionately about is something that is teacher shortage, because the reality is that our critical need in the different areas of where we need teachers for different certified areas is almost nearly every single one of them, including a regular English teacher.
Thank you, Mrs. Stock. Thank you.
Thank
Dr. Hetler.
Thank you. Well, repeat the question for me again so I make sure I get it right.
In your opinion, what are the major issues facing public education today?
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of touched on a lot of these before. I mean, obviously, one is the COVID and coping with that and figuring out how to safely get back into school, both for students who want to be in the classroom, and then if we have students who are still uncomfortable being in the classroom. And what I'm proposing for that is to have two different groups of teachers to teach those two different groups of students. That way teachers and students won't be stuck in the position that they're in now, where teachers are having to teach give half of their attention to their kids in the room and the other half to the computer. So that would be one issue. Another issue will be how we're going to bring ourselves up out of this learning slump that we've gone through in the past year, which again, we've mentioned briefly the summer programs that the Delaware Board of Education is considering and exactly how they're going to work out. Another concern I have is poor test scores, and admittedly, I'm not a big fan of the Smarter Balance testing to start with, so it's not the greatest measure of how our schools are doing, but to be able to work on improving test scores and finding a better way of measuring how kids are doing that's more indicative of future success. Even the GPA is more indicative of future success than Smarter Balance. So that's one of the concerns I have, that and the Common Core testing, which, as I said before, limits teachers in how much variety and creativity they can bring into the classroom. And I think that teachers would do a better job and students would do a better job if there weren't so many restrictions on the teaching.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler. Thank you. Mrs. Alexis, would you like to do the next question?
Well, it appears that we have a lot of questions being submitted in the Q&A, so I would like to defer to Reverend Perry to maybe ask a few of those. We want to make sure we address as much as possible. We have 30 minutes left. It just switched. So we want to get through as much as possible. So I will defer to Reverend Perry at this time.
Okay, first question. We expect a lot of our teachers, and it has been hard and often discouraging, often a discouraging year for them as well as for our families. Burnout is contributing to teacher loss at an increasing rate. What are your ideas around combating this problem so teacher shortage does not spiral out of control and affect class size and quality education for kids?
This will be Dr. Hetler. Be your question first.
Well, first of all, considering the fact that it is Teacher Appreciation Week, I just want to say that I am very appreciative for both of the teachers of both of my kids. This has been a very trying and difficult year. We've all had to adjust multiple times to different scenarios. And I'm really grateful for my daughter's teachers at PS DuPont and the ways they've gone out of their way to help her catch up with her schoolwork. And like Mrs. Harwood and Mrs. Lukadama have been wonderful in helping her. And then also Mr. Harley, he's brand new to our district, and yet he's her choir teacher, and yet he has been so responsive to how the kids are feeling, asking them how their week has been, how their days have been, and just making it almost like a mental health time in addition to singing time. So that's been so helpful for her. And my son is a junior, so of course that's like one of the most important years in terms of preparing for college. And his teachers have been amazing in, he wants to go into art, and they've been so helpful in pointing him in the right direction, especially his art teachers have been at Brandywine High School, just giving him guidance as to what schools would be appropriate for him, and what classes to take next year, and where and when to apply, and making a portfolio for him. So they've just gone out of their way. So I want to thank them for that. And again, I think part of what would make it more pleasant for them would be to have more of the freedom and not be so constrained by the Common Core standards. And also not be so restricted by the amount of time the kids spend on smarter balance testing.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler. Mrs. Stock?
Tanya, thank you so much. I know that that teachers really appreciate parental support, so thank you so much for that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to tell you, as a teacher who has taught during the pandemic and has had the honor of representing our profession this year, it has been really a very trying year, very difficult. Part of what has made it very difficult is that a lot of things were asked of us this year, and it was we rose to the occasion. We really did. We learned how to Zoom and room more and everything else that we did. But the reality is that when you talk to teachers about what they were missing, it was the ability to feel seen and heard, and the ability to have something given to us and say, well, this is kind of what we're thinking. Tell us how that's going to work. We would have loved to have been able to have had some of that input there. And so I think that is going to be one of the things that I do as a school board member, because our teachers are so valuable, and because teacher burnout, especially from this year, I really worry. What are we going to do if we lose our best teachers? And I can tell you that some of the best teachers in my building have told me they don't want to come back because of how difficult this year is. This is on us. This is not on them. We have created a system in which teachers do not feel valued, and they don't feel like they're in situations where they can actually grow. So we need to be a school district where teachers say, you know what, I don't want to go to Pennsylvania. I don't want to go down south. I want to work for the Brandywine School District. And for the teachers that we have here, let's give them an opportunity to be the stakeholders that they are, because nobody knows our students better than the parents and the teachers. And the people who know our students best and their academic needs are the teachers. So let's treat them like the professionals that they are. And let's thank you.
Mrs. Stock. You ladies are doing a wonderful job. Wonderful job. Reverend Perry, next question.
Yes, sir. Next question. What are your thoughts on the critical race theory in the 1619 project? And should this be part of the BSD curriculum?
Okay, so my understanding of the critical race theory is that it is a law theory in which you are looking at laws and theories, much like you can often look at theories and critiques in literature or in whatever academic school that you have. Now, critical race theory, however, is interesting because it does tie the laws and perhaps racist laws that have been passed in the past. For example, the GI Bill. Why was it that even though we had African-American soldiers fight in the war, why was it that they were denied the ability to be able to have all of the benefits from the GI Bills? Well, you see, that has an effect on what happens today, because the number one ability to give wealth to your children is your house. And if you are redlined in certain neighborhoods and you're not able to have a mortgage, you can't buy a house. You cannot gain wealth, and you cannot pass that down to your children. This is part of what makes society unequal, not because people don't want those same opportunities, but because those opportunities have been taken away. So, as well as the 1619 Project, this is another way of looking at history and understanding, okay, what are the historical ties from slavery, and how was America framed with Black Americans, and how does that affect how we see what's happening today? These are important and critical questions, and it's one of the things that if a teacher were to choose to talk about these things, I believe it is helping the students ask critical questions that hopefully will lead to some action. Whether it's going to be the complete curriculum, maybe not necessarily.
Thank you, Ms. Stock. Dr. Hetler?
Sure. So the 1619 Project was written by a journalist for the New York Times, and it was actually her opinion and her perspective on one view of the United States. And it posited the idea of what if the United States were founded in 1619 as opposed to 1776, which is what we normally would celebrate. And it was saying that the United States was founded on the basis of racism, and that why we fought the Revolutionary War was to continue racism in the United States. Several historians from Ivy League schools have looked at this and found that what's said in there is opinion. It's not actually factual. So I think if the 1619 Project is presented in that way as someone's opinion, and perhaps even the way someone can feel due to racism in the country, that is one thing. But if it's presented as a factual history, then that would be inaccurate. And critical race theory, one of the ideas in that is that the racism of the past can be made up for if we flip-flop it and then we're racist toward those who were racist. And I really don't believe that flip-flopping it is going to help. I think Martin Luther King Jr. would not be happy with the idea that we should treat people with a certain color skin better or worse than other people.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler. Reverend Perry, next question.
Yes. If you could create a perfect K through 12 step ladder for kids, what will you change about the current educational curriculum?
Dr. Hetler, this question goes to you.
If I could create a perfect K through 12 ladder, what would I change?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that studies have found that well, this is before K, I guess, that any kind of a preschool is helpful for preparing kids for kindergarten, but that would be before K. I don't know. I guess maybe a different, I think we do need obviously standardized testing, but perhaps one that is better than Common Core. I know some of the problems with Common Core are that it does tend to have a racist component to it, that I mean, it's being used throughout the country, and yet it's not very, I mean, no one standardized test is going to work throughout this whole country. It's too different in different areas, and people are different and situations are different. So perhaps a better sort of standardized curriculum and testing to help kids be placed more appropriately for the following year. I know one struggle that my daughter had before she switched over to the gifted program was that because the teacher had so many students with so many varying abilities and challenges, my daughter was sort of put in a position of having to tutor the other students. They would rank the kids based on their reading level. And so she would end up paired with the child in the class with the lowest reading level. And then her job was to basically tutor them because the teacher was so overwhelmed with all of these students in the class. So in some way to have fewer students or less variability so that the teacher doesn't have to cater in that large way.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler. Mrs. Stock, question to you.
Yes, actually, so the reality is that it does actually start before kindergarten. And the reality is that if we can get students to grade level reading by the time that they are in 3rd grade, their indicator for academic success and then therefore life success is so much more multiplied. So we have to put more resources into smaller classrooms, free preschool, and opportunities to equalize the playing field. In the Brandywine School District, we have one free preschool program, but what about all the families that cannot afford to pay for preschool, like some of the families here in BSD? So is it right that some students come into kindergarten already more ready to read and other students are not? And so we really do have to focus on preschool to begin with. And then in the early elementary, we need to lower the numbers of students in the classes so that we can put more time and attention in getting our students grade level reading and ready. It's actually one of the things that worked for my daughter was that she was at a private school from kindergarten to 1st grade. And because of some bullying issues, and she also wasn't able to read, we ended up having her go to Hanby for her 2nd grade year. And because of her teacher, Sandy Meredith, and because of the administrators there, my daughter flourished. And not only could she read by the end of her 2nd grade year, she was reading at several grade levels later. And so we need to put more supports there. But we also need to take a hard look at our curriculum and our systems and ask ourselves, why is it that some students, it is easier for them to succeed? Why are some students still coming to class this year? Why are some students doing this? Why are other students off the grid this year? What have we done in the past to not engage them in school? It starts with curriculum, it starts with leadership, it starts with teachers.
Thank you, Mrs. Stock. Reverend Perry.
Yes. Are there any issues with the district calendar that you would address or change?
Is this for me?
This is for you, Mrs. Stock.
All right, absolutely. So yes, actually there is one issue. So one of the things that I learned while speaking to different community members is when I met with Muslim leaders of the community, one of the things that they expressed to me is they had some 3 simple asks that I felt like were something that I think that we could have made accommodations for those students. One of them was about the calendar. So of course, students can miss school for different reasons. However, other religions like the Christian religion and the Jewish religion, we already take those days off of the school calendar. And it's one of the things that they have asked for is, can we take a look at this calendar issue? And because I thought this was so important, whether I'm on the school board or not, is something that I've already given to the leadership at BSD and the leadership at Red Clay. And I know for a fact that my leadership in Red Clay is already meeting with them to take a look at their asks to help equalize and to help them feel more welcome in the schools. Personally, as a teacher, I think that students and teachers are more motivated at the beginning of the year. And so I would like to see, just personally, I would like to see the calendar actually move up in August and end a little bit earlier. But I just think that's taking advantage of when students and when people are most motivated, and soon after spring break, the motivation level really does go down. And we do see that a lot. But the reality is that as a school board member, it wouldn't just be up to me, these calendar issues. It is about getting stakeholders to the table and asking them, what is it that you'd like to see in the calendar issue? Now, you heard a Kim Stock opinion about what I'd like to see about the calendar, but just because I want to move it up earlier doesn't mean that's what makes the most sense for BSD. So let's get people together. Let's get some parents. Let's get some students together. Let's get some educators together. And let's get our school district administration together. And let's ask them.
Thank you, Mr. Stock. Dr. Hetler?
Sure. I would say, I mean, there's lots of different ways to go with this question. And one of them would be extending the school year. Some people have asked me how I would feel about the kids going into the summer more, not just this year because of COVID, but just generally adding several more days to the school year. And well, it kind of goes along with what Kim said, that I think adding more days is just going to be burnout, that the kids can only handle so much, and teachers too can only handle so much, and it might just end up being filler time, adding extra days. So I wouldn't recommend that. And plus, I think summer is so important for kids to, have an opportunity to, relax and go to the pool, read, hopefully, although we don't do enough of that anymore. So I really wouldn't get rid of the summer break or extend the school year into the summer. I know we also had a trimester. We tried that for a little bit at one of the schools, and that didn't seem to be beneficial in any way. If we move the school year forward, my guess is we would just burn out earlier. So I'm not sure that it matters exactly when that is during the course of the year. Starting earlier isn't going to make much of a difference. I do like when we start after Memorial Day, because otherwise we start and we go for 2 or 3 days and then we're gone and then we come back. So I think it makes more sense to start for real after the holiday. So yeah, I think motivation is already starting to wane now. So adding a couple more weeks would certainly not benefit anyone.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler. Reverend Perry, next question.
If I may interject, just keeping an eye on the time. We do have a hard stop at 7.
Yes.
So it looks like we probably have time for maybe 1 more or 2 more questions, excuse me, and then some closing statements from our candidates. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of the time. It does also appear that some of the questions are directed at one candidate or the other. We would encourage you to reach out directly to a candidate if you have a specific question for that one person. In this forum, we do want both participants to be able to answer the questions posed. So we are going to definitely not get to all the questions. So if you would like to follow up with the candidates, perhaps they can provide an email address for us at the end. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Reverend Perry, excuse me.
What, in your opinion, please name one thing that you feel is the best thing about the Brandywine School District and one area of improvement. And how would you continue to support what you feel is the best thing, and how would you address the area of improvement?
Dr. Hetler, that question goes to you first.
I think that the best thing about the Brandywine School District is that we're sort of a big family. It has something to do with where we live and the fact that everybody kind of knows everybody. But one year, I don't remember which year it was, but I was at Target the day before school started, and it was the day when we had a hurricane coming, and Dr. Holiday canceled school for the first day. So all of these moms were in Target, and all of a sudden all of our phones went off, and we all got our message that there's no school tomorrow. And it was almost like a big party in Target, that we all were in the same situation. And, we we talk to each other about it. And I think that's a great thing about the district. And I think the fact that there is so much variability within students and families and even teachers, I think that is a bonus. I think that is a great thing. That's part of, like I said, what makes the United States great, and it makes Brandywine great. What I would improve, I guess, I'm going to go again to the test scores, that I'm concerned that we need to do something. If there's another way to measure kids learning other than the test scores, I'm good with that. I'm not tied to those. I just feel like we're struggling with getting kids, and not just in the Brandywine School District, but throughout Delaware and throughout the United States. We're just not doing as well as we have in the past. We used to lead in our education and academics, and now other countries, developed countries, are bypassing us, so that we're sort of in the middle of the pack now. So I'm not exactly sure how to change that, but I think that is the biggest struggle, the biggest problem for our school and the whole country.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler. Mrs. Stock?
Yes, so the best thing, in my opinion, about the Brandywine School District is our students. Our students are funny, they're thoughtful, they're inquisitive, they ask critical questions, and you should see our teenagers if you haven't yet. Our teenagers are advocates. They advocate for themselves. They advocate for others. They teach me how to be a better person. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I'm advocating for both a student advisory committee to the district leadership, as well as a student board member, because I believe in our students so much. And I believe that it's time for our students to actually be able to take more of a leadership role in our school district. Now, what do I think could be improved in our school district? The number one thing is access to programs and opportunities. We do have some safeguards in place. We do have the AVID program. And if you haven't checked out the AVID program, I'm going to invite you to do that, because that's super exciting, both in my school as well as in the Brandywine School District. So we also have other programs in which students with different learning needs can also be a part of. Take, for example, the program that my oldest daughter was in with gifted services. But my question for you is that I know that it is a nonverbal test that is given in order to assess whether or not the student is gifted, I guess, if you will, in the academic sense. However, are the directions always given in English, or are they often also given in another language, in the home language that the child speaks? Because most of the students that I teach only spoke one language before they entered school, and it wasn't English. And I can tell you, my students are gifted in many ways, and so is BSD. So we have to take a look at what are we doing to help those students be part of that.
Thank you, Mrs. Stock. At this time, I would like to ask Ms. Andrianopoulos if she would tell the voting places for people to go to on May the 11th before we do our closing statements.
I would be happy to do that. Reverend Perry, did we want to try to squeeze in one more quick question?
Yes, if possible. Because the Brandywine School District services varying demographics, what will you do to cultivate an inclusive environment, particularly students who are transgendered, non-binary, or artistic, for example?
That question go to Mrs. Stock first.
Yes, definitely. Well, one of the things that I have learned from my students is to use my pronouns. And that's not something that I would have known if it wasn't for my students. So what does that do? It helps to foster a safe environment. It signals for the students that I'm a safe person, that I'm somebody that they can talk to if need be. And I'm also somebody that, although I might make mistakes, that I'm there to learn. And I'm there to learn how to be better. One of the things about our students who are transgender is that we do need to create safe policies for them. However, we need to go beyond just being safe for them. We need to be able to celebrate the joy. We need to celebrate their joy, and we need to celebrate and make them feel like we're not just here just to protect them. we're here to love them, like we're here to love all of our students. So things like bathrooms for transgender students. If we're just telling students that they just have to go to the nurse's bathroom, which unfortunately is the case in many schools, I've heard from students that actually makes them feel terrible to have to do that. And so as a result, some of the students have told me that they won't even go to the bathroom all day long because they have nowhere to go. We can't allow this to continue to happen. We need to have gender neutral bathrooms, or we need to allow students to use the restrooms of the identity that they identify with. It's not a big deal. They are girls, they are boys. It is truly that simple. And if we want to know how to better serve them, let's hear from their families. Let's hear from their students, and let's ask them, what can we do to make you feel like you're part of this school? And what are we doing that's making you feel like you're not part of the school? And I think it really starts there, honestly, with a lot of the issues that we have. And that just happens to be one of them that I've learned a lot from my families and from my students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stock. Dr. Hetler?
So of course, I believe that transgendered students should be treated with the same kindness and decency and respect as any other student. I think that it's great if schools can have a unisex bathroom. I know that lots of stores have been able to do that. However, they have more money than districts do. And also have more space. So we are limited in that way, at least for now. So I think the next best option, as Kim said, is the nurse's bathroom. And admittedly, it's not perfect. People talk about how transgendered students, when they use the nurse's bathroom, the embarrassment of that can cause them to commit suicide. First, I would say, I don't think that that is the biggest issue in a transgender person's struggle. I mean, there's lots of ways in which kids can be horrible and cruel to each other in person or in social media. And actually, lots of kids have anxiety using the bathroom anyway, who are not transgendered. I know that that's a big issue for lots of children, and like Kim said, they will, hold it all day long and actually cause themselves physical health problems. So I would say that part of the issue with transgendered students needs to be related to our bullying policy. And specifically, I'm guessing that a lot of the unkind words may be occurring on social media, and that needs to be in our code of conduct, that unkind, insulting, cruel words are not acceptable in the Brandywine School District.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler.
Okay.
Thanks to our candidates. You both have 1 minute left to give out any information. Get your last minute votes, get your last minute everything. And Dr. Hetler, since Mrs. Stock went first at the beginning, we would like for you to go first now. Closing remarks.
Okay, so I just want to thank everyone at the Brandywine School District Parent and Citizen Advisory Committee for organizing this forum and giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight and tell you a little bit about myself. I believe that my education and experience in psychology, research, and teaching will be a benefit to the Brandywine School District in determining the best ways to improve the academic performance, well-being, and future of all of our students, regardless of their ethnicity, race, socioeconomic status, or disability. I want to return our students to school full-time in the fall and also cater to those who are still concerned about COVID by having 2 separate groups of teachers. And if you want to learn more about me, you can go to my webpage at www.tanyathedoc.com, and I'll put it in the chat for you.
Thank you, Dr. Hetler. Mrs. Stock, closing remarks.
Hi, everybody. by now, you know a little bit about me. You do know that I am a parent, and that's a job that I take really seriously. But for my qualifications for this particular job, you should also know by now that I am a lifelong educator. I am so passionate about education because our students are the only thing that matters. And that we should, all of our policies that we adopt and every decision that we make, we need to think about what is going to be best for our students. And a lot of times, sometimes to know and understand those clarifications is often to ask the stakeholders, to ask those students. It's been said that sometimes that because I'm a teacher, that I'm always going to side with the teacher union, as if I have always sided with the teacher union since 1997 when I began my education career. I would like you to go to kimstockteacher.com to learn more about me. You'll see videos and articles, and you will see in action what I can do for the Brandywine School District.
Thank you, Mrs. Stock. I'd like to take this time to thank our candidates and our audience this evening. Please remember to vote May the 11th, Tuesday. Details are on our BSD website, district headlines and featured. If you look on the website, it'll tell you where to go to vote. Thank you for this evening, signing off. And remember, better skills, better pay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much for your time. It looks as though Reverend Perry did put the email addresses of all three candidates in the chat. So we will keep this going, even though DETV had to leave us at 7. We'll keep this up for a minute in case any of the participants want to write those down or screenshot those. Also, I know there were many, many questions we didn't get to. So for those who did participate and submit a question, email is going to be the best way to go now, because this will be the last forum that we are hosting. I don't know if there are any more in the next week, but if you have a question that did not get addressed, please feel free to email the candidates. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn there for the candidates.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you so much. And just everybody, thank you, stay safe, and have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
So much.
Bye.
And I should say thank you to my co-hosts, Reverend Perry and Mr. Laws.
Thank you. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.